morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order at 9:02 this morning. Thank you for joining us. It has been a very hectic and busy start to the month of December, so this is our last meeting of the year, so thank you for being here today. We can move down to the adoption of our agenda, and we have two proposed additions, two closed session items, J1 and J2. J1, Labor Relations, FOIP Section 24. Can't read that. And Section J.2, Personnel, FOIP Section 19. Is there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? So, entertain a motion. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you, John. John has moved to adopt the agenda as amended. Any discussion? Not, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. Before, in your package, you have the County Council meeting minutes from the December 1st, 2022 meeting. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Claus?
I'll move the council meeting of December 1st as presented.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved the County Council meeting minutes of the December 1st meeting. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We do have one delegation this morning at 9:15, but prior to that, we're going to move into camera and address our first closed session item, the J1, Labor Relations. I would entertain a motion to enter a closed session. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we move into closed session.
Mark's moved that we move into a closed session. Any discussion?
where we're looking for our support from the federal and provincial governments and the next step for our municipal partners. So just to kind of back up a little bit and provide some background for those of you who might not be familiar with the initiative, it's been an ongoing economic development initiative for the past about 4 years between economic development Lethbridge, Lethbridge County, the MD of Taber, the town of Taber, and the town of Coaldale, so 5 key municipal partners, as well as support from organizations such as Community Futures and Southgrow, really to market and promote the region as a destination for agri-food investment, and to also really put Southern Alberta on the map and collectively work to really get companies and organizations from across Canada and internationally to know who we are and what we're doing here and what the strengths of our regions are. I know I've traveled to conferences in Europe and across Canada. I was recently in Toronto and speak to companies in India or from Denmark. They probably haven't even heard of Alberta, yet alone Lethbridge, Lethbridge County, the town of Taber. So it really makes sense for us as smaller municipal partners to work together to actively promote this sector. And really, this initiative has been something that's kind of on the side of the desks of the economic development professionals across the region, for the past 4 years, in addition to everything else we do, on our day-to-day basis. So what we've really tried to plan to do over the next 3 to 4 years is secure some federal and provincial support to really engage further, provide a few additional resources as a collective to further support this cluster development and have dedicated resources for that. So to date, just kind of again more background, we've completed some high-level strategic planning as a group. We've hosted investment tours. We've created an asset map. We have a website. I don't know if you've seen it. It's Canada's Premier Food Corridor.ca. Developed marketing materials, attended events, recently had a CARES grant to do some of the online marketing and promotional ad campaigns. And with Prairie's CAN support, with provincial support, and a bit of additional municipal support, we really think we can really take a more proactive approach to support the small and medium enterprises in this region and to further support the value-added agriculture industry here in Southern Alberta. So I do believe in your package you have kind of the 2-pager I provided to Prairie's CAN. This was provided to Prairie's CAN in the summer. Sorry, you're good. This is the 2-pager that we provided to Prairie's CAN, just as an initial starting point for the discussions, kind of outlining some of the activities, a bit of the high-level budget, estimates, and it's just to kind of see where they are at in terms of their support levels. And we've had great responses from Prairie's CAN. They've invited us to submit a full project proposal, so that's kind of where we're at right now. Finalize the proposal, working with the province on whether they would be able to provide the funding we've outlined in that application. And then from our municipal partners, we're asking for a bit of a contribution. So what we're looking for is $5,000 per year for 2023, 2024, and 2025 from Lethbridge County, from the MD of Taber, from the town of Taber, and from the town of Coaldale. And in speaking with some of our other partners, they've already kind of put that within their operational budgets or within their current economic development budgets, but also, bringing this to councils right now if it's not already in your budgets or it's something you're considering supporting for the next couple of years. We then use year 4 to really evaluate the project, evaluate the impact we had on the industry and the businesses here in the region to then, further build the case that if we'd like to continue it, what type of support we need to ensure that we do that. There will be a memorandum of understanding developed for the project as we get a little further on with Prairie's CAN. If they come back with different budgets, different numbers, we'll have to, readjust, rescope the project. But there will be an MOU really outlining how, the roles, their responsibilities, and how this project will be overseen and managed, and also the reporting back to our partners. So, how often we come back to Lethbridge County to provide you with an update on activities, things like that. And in terms of, protocol for investment attraction initiatives, that kind of thing, where, the dedicated resource if you're attending a conference or an event or we're hosting a booth or things like that, they're there to talk about the food corridor as a whole, not one specific partner, one specific site, things like that. They're really marketing for the whole region, and also just how it will work for support of existing businesses. Really that is going to be a lot of the key activities is supporting the existing SMEs in our region in the food processing industry, whether that's helping them with labor issues. We know that's a big challenge right now is attracting skilled labor, and keeping and retaining workers. So, if we're able to use that resource to collectively come up with strategies and initiatives and then, actively engage with higher levels of government, if it's, an immigration project, if it's pilot projects, things like that. So there's a lot of activities that is detailed in the 2-pagers. I won't really go through the whole thing in detail because I'm sure you had a chance to read it. But, the 5 key things: industry engagement and support of SME growth. And that's everything from direct engagement with businesses, on a one-to-one basis, working with the key players and things like the food tours that we we do, a lot of those are within Lethbridge County that we partner with the Agri-Food Hub and Tourism Lethbridge. During the summer, we do that food tour around the region, working with the college, acting as a connector, things like that. Like I said, workforce and labor initiatives, marketing, promotion of the food corridor, a situational analysis with infrastructure capacity, so that's really around water, wastewater, and utility capacities throughout the region in terms of attracting new investments, but also supporting growth of our existing businesses. And then the targeted investment attraction piece I spoke to. So, the two, we'd be basically creating 2.5 positions with this over the 3 years. A cluster development manager to kind of oversee the project, but also be the kind of external face of the project to be doing more of the investment attraction piece. And then a full-time position that we're calling an industry engagement coordinator. So that's the person who will focus on the region here, on the current businesses, how to support them, how to help them grow, how to, expand the activities we're doing here. Some of the other, projects that are highlighted here, there's the highway signage project. So we'll work with Alberta Transportation on kind of a What's Growing Here campaign. We still have to determine exactly what type of signage that will look like. Sometimes Alberta Transportation is quite specific to what we can do. So, there's many examples throughout the province, across the country that have done signage initiatives, and that would be, throughout the county, throughout the MD, along the highway, so people get a better understanding of really what's growing here. I know, I personally did grow up in Lethbridge, and I did not know there were so many crops growing just right in and around our region. And so that would be a great initiative to, further engage our local, population on actually what our strengths are. We're also working with the Agri-Food Hub on a potential kind of display, which would be interactive based on technology within the new facility, so that will provide long-term exposure to all the businesses as part of that asset map. My mic wasn't on the whole time. I'll redo it. So, yeah, word for word. Oh, that might be a little challenging. So yeah, and then we have the research part of it as well, some marketing initiatives, equipment, software, things like that. There's targeted investment attraction platforms that we could use, updating the website, providing support to local SMEs. So I think with that, that's kind of my spiel. At this point, the ask is there any concerns from the county? Are there any red flags? Are there any things you think we're missing in terms of key activities? And then, if you're able at some point to provide a letter of support, we don't need a funding commitment at this point because we're still, working with the province and the federal government on their funding pieces. But really just wanted to provide an update, get some feedback if there's any major concerns or any issues, and just open it up for questions. And at that point, go from there.
Thank you very much, Ben. Yeah, I would open it up for questions. Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard you looking for support from the town of Tabor, County Tabor, Coaldale. Can you go a little bit more east to Colehurst? Because they would probably be part of it. Are they included already?
Well, so the 5 funding partners that we're asking for funding support from are the ones I mentioned, being Economic Development Lethbridge, the town of Tabor, MD of Tabor, Coaldale. But really, that the whole jurisdiction of Lethbridge County and the MD of Tabor is the focus of it. It's that really the Highway 3 corridor between Lethbridge and Tabor. We've spoken to groups like Claresholm, we've spoken to groups like Bow Island, further even east to Medicine Hat. And within the kind of industry engagement coordinator, I believe it's kind of in the first section, what we'd look at is sustainability of the initiative ongoing without needing federal and provincial support. So if that means we need to kind of expand the corridor, Medicine Hat has always told us they want to be part of it. So really just kind of exploring what those partnerships have looked like. But to this date, really, we focused on just these 5 municipalities overarching within the 2 counties, the MD and the county, because, it's been a relationship built on trust, built on, partnerships of the economic development professionals within the region. We haven't had a MOU signed yet of the partners. We've done projects together. We've done a lot of these initiatives, but we've really done it based on our working relationships. But that's certainly a piece of that kind of future sustainability is what does it look like to expand the corridor? Who would be the partners that make sense? If it goes all the way up to Claresholm, is it really now a corridor being, the east-west, then north-south? So it just kind of making those relationships and partnerships work with what makes sense for the initiative.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You were talking about signage through the area. Like that's not necessarily just Lethbridge, but it could be David or towards Claresholm or whatever. So some of the groups down there, and I was thinking of the Sugar Beet Growers. Have you talked to them, and are they willing to basically put up the funding for big signage? Because I'm a beet grower myself, and I know we certainly would have liked to see some more recognition, so are the beet growers association that?
So we have had discussions with groups like the beet growers, the potato growers, the pulse growers, and things like that, just about our initiative, the food corridor. And I think, you know, just based on initial discussions, they're quite supportive of engaging with this initiative somehow. So we do have some industry funding in year 2 and 3 kind of earmarked is what we're looking to get from those industry players, and that could be contributions to the highway signage project or, you know, whatever initiatives they feel they could support. But certainly the industry associations are going to be a key player to really get the word out, get engagement from all the producers in the region. And, you know, that's part of that industry engagement coordinator position would be to work with those groups on where they see natural fits for the project and where it makes sense. So certainly I think there's certainly opportunity for that.
John, then Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to sort of expand a little bit on what Klaus was talking about, we have a number of good relationships and partnerships to the west that, you know, in the sense of Colehurst, Fort McLeod, that are all still part of the same food corridor. And from my point of view, I would encourage you to approach those municipalities as well and bring them in on it. Especially, you know, in speaking with Colehurst, they do seem to be the forgotten child, and they shouldn't be. You know, they're a vibrant little community that desperately wants to be involved in some of the economic development of the region. So.
No, and I appreciate that. Thank you. And certainly, like, through our relationship partnerships with groups like Southgrow and Alberta Southwest, you know, they kind of encompass a lot of those municipalities as well. So yeah, I think it's certainly, you know, those discussions to be had as we look to what the future of this corridor looks like in the initiative.
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Ben, could you maybe just kind of tell everybody who's not really super familiar what you use the funding for, like from the federal government, the provincial government, and what does that go towards? What do you do with that money?
So for this project plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so really, I did provide the Excel sheet that's our overall budget, but a good chunk of it is for kind of those 2.5 positions. So there would be the cluster development manager, the industry engagement coordinator, and a half-time admin to kind of help support some of the financial reporting, and also for, you know, event coordination, things like that. So that, you know, that's about $500,000 over the 3 years between the provincial government, the federal government, and the municipal partners. Overall, we're asking for about $700,000 from Prairie's CAN, about $275,000 from the provincial government, and then through the 5 partnering municipalities is about $380,000 over those 3 years, with economic development Lethbridge kind of, through the city of Lethbridge to economic development as part of one of our new initiatives, would be about $120,000 from the first year, $110,000, and then about $90,000 in the third year. So, you know, between all those funding partners, it's about a $1.4 million over the 3 years. You know, $500,000 for those positions for 3 years. Trade show and travel, you know, that's a big piece of getting that person out and traveling and going to events. You know, that's some money over the next couple of years. And again, the highway signage project, if you worked with signage and things before, some of those can be quite expensive, and kind of what that looks like, it would be a good chunk of money as well.
Any other questions for Ben?
Just,
Yeah, go ahead, Morris.
So you guys attended a lot of the trade shows, and of course, you're probably attending the Ag Expo,
Yes.
and where else do you go?
And so, sorry, I'll just back up. For Ag Expo, Canada's premier food corridor is already set up to be a kind of a sponsor of that event, so we will have a presence there. There's a couple different events throughout 2023 we've already kind of identified that we will potentially be looking at going. One in San Francisco, there's a food ingredient conference in France, but we're also looking at kind of bringing it with the Agri-Food Hub being developed here in Lethbridge, you know, that new facility, when they're bringing more events to this region, just having a bigger presence of the food corridor at that as well when people are coming here. I'm working very closely with Invest Alberta on the investment attraction piece, and they've been very kind to share their plans for the next year and a half on what events, what conferences, what trade shows they're planning to attend. And so we'll work to, you know, collaborate with them as well on, you know, if they're sending people. When I was in Toronto a few weeks ago for Plant Forward, which is all about plant protein products, they had a few Invest Alberta people there, and it was really great to have them there to also support what we were doing, and so they would meet with a company, I'd meet with someone, and when we, make those connections. So we'd look to kind of leverage those partnerships with Invest Alberta, with Invest Canada, with, people like Alberta Ag and Forestry and Jobs, Economy and Innovation. They have certain events and things they go to. So using the budget that we have for this food court initiative for the next couple of years to, get to more events. Because I attend quite a few, but they're not all agri-food related, right? Because we do a couple other types of events as well.
Ben, wearing your economic development hat, we're seeing the term corridor used a lot more, and like it's recently been added to the Minister of Transportation's portfolio, the transportation and economic corridors. Do you see this gaining steam and becoming more popular, or how do you see that developing?
I do, yeah. Economic corridors is something that's kind of really gained traction the last few years. We've, been one of the kind of piloting initiatives, especially in Alberta, for this type of thing with regional collaboration. We've gotten a lot of interest from provincial and federal partners on what are we doing in food corridor, what's next, and it's always, we're trying to keep up with what our higher levels of government are looking for us to do, because they see the value in this. We, like I said, with Prairie's Can and with the province, we've had some great initial discussions that they're all, they're supportive of it. It's just kind of how it all fits together. So yeah, I do think that, as we move forward, corridor types of initiatives, regional collaboration, that's really where economic development is going, because, we're stronger together, from MD of Tabor to Lethbridge County and within, we have quite a lot of the same value proposition, but also unique and individual opportunities for businesses and for existing businesses to grow and expand here. And so, when we want to look at doing marketing or travel or things like that, it makes sense to do it together, because, we're, at the end of the day, we're kind of smaller players compared to a Toronto, a Vancouver, or other places that are also trying to attract these type of investments, trying to do these things. But, based on the strengths of our region, our irrigation infrastructure, our growing conditions, we have what these companies are looking for, but it's just a matter of getting us out there more, getting the word out to some of these bigger companies. So I think there's an exciting opportunity right now to kind of capitalize on provincial and federal interest in these type of corridor initiatives.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Any other questions?
Yes,
Yeah, go ahead, Morris.
comment if I may, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. You must have heard that the county is planning on introducing some incentive for businesses to come, and so I certainly hope that you're using that. And
Yes, for sure. I mean, yeah, the town of Tabor has an incentive policy, Lethbridge does as well, and that'd be all just part of that, package that we put together for the investment attraction piece, and for, existing businesses if they're looking to expand, where here's all these opportunities within the food corridor and within our partners. So certainly that would be a part of that kind of marketing promotional tool and be highlighted as a strength of the county. Yeah.
Anything else? So Ben, would you like at this time, are you looking for a letter of support then, or is that further down the road?
If the county is comfortable with doing that at this point, that would certainly be welcome, just in terms of while we're having these ongoing discussions, if there's further questions, or if you'd like me to come back, once we have kind of the MOU drafted, things like that. I'm just at this point open to however the county's feeling comfortable, if there were any red flags, any reasons that, that we're going down the wrong path. But, if you're just wanting to take the information, that's perfectly fine as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much, Ben. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks, Ben.
so, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
You may.
would you like to have a motion from the floor now to letter of support of the organization?
Yep, that'd be fine. I don't believe at this time they're ready for the financial piece quite yet, but we can sure draft that letter of support if that's council's wish.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Okay. Morris has moved to draft a letter of support for the Canada's Premier Food Corridor project that was just discussed. Any further discussion? Not, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. We can move down in our agenda to E, subdivision applications, and start on number 1, subdivision application 2022-0-168. Good morning, Hillary. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Council. So we have two subdivision applications. Oops. We have two subdivision applications today. The first being pretty much a realignment of two existing titles. The application is located in the Northeast 12 11 22, west of the 4th, which is to the north and west of the Picture Butte area. And what they're looking to do is to resolve previous encroachment issue and realign the titles so that they can better use the infrastructure that's associated with the existing feedlot in that area. And so increasing the feedlot title area and decreasing the agricultural area slightly. So with that, I will get Steve to go through the planning comments and the recommendation.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, this first application in front of you is to do a property line adjustment. As described, there's an encroachment, so to speak, between the two parcels. The property line for the smaller farm title cuts through the dugout that's there on the northwest corner. The existing title for the yard there is a very old title. It was created prior to the 1950s in any of the when the subdivision record tracking started. It's a description on the title there. So at one time, it sounds like the dugout was used for both the agricultural land and the yard there. That's not the situation anymore. And with some of the changes with the LID in the area and with the pipelines and that sort of stuff, the dugout now just entirely serves the yard portion and the operation that's there. So the realignment is just to move that boundary all the way over to the west side of the dugout, so that's contained entirely within the confines of the residential yard, farmyard there. So that involves about a 0.7 acres of land. There'll be a swap between the two. And the dugout is the sole water supply for the yard, and the agricultural portion of land doesn't utilize it at all. As this is just a parcel boundary, a property line adjustment, the access and servicing and that sort of stuff for the yard is unaffected by this. Nothing will change with that. As part of the circulation and the referral process, there was no objections or concerns with anybody to the subdivision. There's no easements required. Since the package came out to you, we received 2 more responses from ACO Transmission Pipeline that has no issues or concerns, and also from the LNID, which also has no objections to the subdivision. So with that and this property line adjustment and swapping the 0.78 acres of land, this does comply with your policies in the land use bylaw and the subdivision criteria for a reconfiguration of titles property line adjustment. You're not creating a separate standalone title here. The same amount of titles is there. We're just moving the one property line over and adjusting the size between the two. The enlarged parcel size still complies with the County Lethbridge Land Use Bylaw maximum size requirements for isolated parcel. And these types of subdivisions for a reconfiguration property line adjustment are basically a discretionary type subdivision in the sense that you just look at each application on its own merits and what's in front of you and whether the situation makes sense or not, that type of a thing, if it's a logical thing to move that property line. So with that, the adjusted parcel and the boundary realignment will result in that there'll be no property line cutting through the dugout anymore. It'll be situated entirely to the west side of that dugout. So on that basis, I have recommended approval to you on your draft resolution in front of you. It would just be with the 2 standard conditions that the taxes are paid and up to date, and a development agreement, if required, is entered into with the county. The third condition is the most important one, being that the consolidation of land occurs by plan of survey from an Alberta land surveyor, so that's all tied together. not a standalone title and can't be re-subdivided without coming back to you as the subdivision authority ever for an approval. And that they provide an up-to-date survey or sketch at the end illustrating all that. So with those 4 conditions, and as the reasons outlined there for you, I've recommended the approval to you.
Thank you, Steve. Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seeing that it's just pretty straightforward, I'll move the recommendation of the subdivision application 2022-0-168 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Klaus. Klaus moved the recommendation. Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on that picture you have up there. It says are you taking 2 parcels to consolidate to one? Like it says from C to T and from C to T. So does that?
Through the chair to Councillor Hickey. So from here is just stating that they're taking 0.7 acres from the agricultural land and then adding it to the smaller title. So the smaller title increases by 0.78 acres to be a 6.97 acre title altogether.
But doesn't the 6.2 already exist?
It does, yeah.
That's right. So we're just adding to it, this 0.78 acres. That's why it's a reconfiguration, moving the title boundary over.
Okay, I just was confused by the fact it says from to
Yeah.
for both of them.
Yeah, that's, Mr. Chair, so that's just describing the table of areas. So from the smaller one existing, it's the 6.2. From the larger one, we're taking to consolidate. From that, it's the 0.78. Add it together, so the adjusted yard title is the 6.97. So that's just the way the surveyors describe it on the drawing.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are both the same owner?
No.
No.
Okay. So there's 2 separate landowners here, and they're both in agreement with this?
That's correct, yeah.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is the real purpose of increasing that acreage by that 1.6 acres?
The purpose is to include the dugout into the acreage title. Because, sorry, I will pull up the map. So as you can see now, the dugout is not included in that property and it encroaches, so it's to resolve the encroachment issue.
Any further discussion? So Klaus has moved the recommendation that subdivision application 22-0168 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. There's no further discussion. Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hillary. We can move down to subdivision application number 2 for today. Subdivision application 2022-0171, Prairie Gem Farms Limited. Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next subdivision application is to take a yard out of a previously unsubdivided quarter section, being the southwest 35-919 west of the 4th. And so this is located to the south and east of the town of Coaldale. And it does meet all the subdivision criteria for a first parcel out of a quarter section. And with that, I will get Steve to provide the planning comments and the recommendation.
This next application in front of you is to take out an existing farmstead in the southwest corner of the quarter section. It's just about 1.5 miles northwest of the hamlet of Chin. The yard there is a well-established existing yard that has a dwelling, number of improvements on there, and some dugouts, grain bins, those sorts of things associated with the farmyard. The proposed subdivision parcel boundaries to be delineated by the tree shelter belt on the north side of the property line, and it'll be angled on the east side to account for the irrigation pivot system on the adjacent agricultural land. There'll be no resulting encroachments with the proposed property line from where they've proposed it. The current yard, the owners have a cistern to haul water and a sewage treatment with an on-site septic pipe system just to the west of the dwelling. So they'll be within the confines of the property once subdivided, no resulting encroachments. There are no abandoned gas wells in proximity. There are 2 gas transmission lines that run through the quarter section. You may see on the drawing there, there's one just to the east that runs north-south and behind the yard. The subdivision won't be affecting, and will be to the west of that ATCO transmission line. And since the package came out to you, we have the comments back from ATCO transmission lines, and they have no objections or concerns with subdivision as proposed, and it won't affect their pipeline there at all with that. So, as part of the review and looking at the confined feeding operations in the area, it meets any applicable MDS. The closest one is over 1,050 meters away and meets any MDS that's required. So, as well, since the package came out to you, we have received, actually, I think it did get in the package before we sent it, but this is just a mile north of Highway 3. It's within the referral distance of Alberta Transportation. Alberta Transportation has no objections and approved it. There's no, obviously, direct highway access. It takes access from the West Municipal Road Allowance. So with that, this will be the first subdivision out of the quarter section for an existing farmstead, so it meets your policy in the land use bylaw for first parcel out subdivision. And that your bylaw has a flexible maximum parcel size for existing farmsteads as the 2 to 10 acre, and this is at 4.24 acres, so it complies with those size requirements. And as well, being an existing yard, there's described all the servicing is in place and it meets all those requirements. So with that, on the basis of conforming to your policies and subdivision criteria, I have recommended approval to you for this first farmstead out subdivision. Again, it would be with 2 standard conditions: that the taxes are paid and up to date and the development agreement entered into if required. And then that they have to submit to us yet a final plan based on your approval here that corresponds to that. And originally, when I sent out the package, we hadn't heard from everybody yet, so we had the 4th on there, kind of a blanket condition for the utility companies. But since then, and we've heard back from ATCO Pipelines, we don't need any easements, and none of the utility companies have asked or requested for an easement, but those would be the conditions presented to you.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? John, and then Morris? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we look at the subdivision line, if there appears to be some buildings that are very close to the eastbound, if you're looking at the picture.
Yeah, this is the survey, so this shows the actual distances from the proposed property.
Oh, okay, so the photo that we have may not necessarily be completely accurate.
That's correct. It could be an older picture from before.
Okay, so do we have any concerns that those buildings may be encroaching?
No, they all are within the property line.
Okay, but they don't appear to be. If you look at the picture, that's my concern.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, some of the buildings that there have been removed, and a few of the other items that appear in the photos, or some of them actually weren't buildings, they were movable trailers and equipment and that sort of a thing. So the applicant has had a updated surveyor sketch done where they went out in the field and captured all the main improvements and that sort of a thing. And from that, there are no encroachments to do their proposed property line there on the east side.
Perfect. Thanks.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, like this one goes by the company name, I guess, or whatever, and no personal name, but I'm sure the acreage is gonna be used for personal use, but there is no personal name, and I guess that probably was requested by that person who applied for this?
Yeah, so they would have applied because that's their what's on the title, so that's what's listed on the application.
And I guess that is requested.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Oh, go ahead. No, I didn't have a question. Oh, I was gonna do exactly what you were doing. Fine. All right, I'd like to move that subdivision application 2022-0-171 be approved, subject to conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that subdivision application number 2022-0-171 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mr.
Steve.
Chairman.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thanks, Steve. Have a good Christmas if we don't see you. I'm heading out on Saturday, Sundays. Listen to this, Mr. Mazel. What? I don't know. That's a good question. Too busy watching the documentary.
Almost.
Everybody had to change.
Not soon enough.
Follow them, you know, things, because then they have to change. Lori, our lawyer, like all the things.
We can move down on our agendas to department reports, F1, corporate services, F1.1, the quarterly financial report, August to October 2022. And we have our manager of finance and administration, Jennifer Place. Morning, Jen. Oh,
Thank you,
sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
Right up.
Jen is like 2 hours away from leaving for New Zealand, so let's be gentle with her.
Hoping my brain is here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman
Morning,
and
Jen.
council. I was hoping to bring this forward to you in November, but of course with schedules and budget, it's a little bit delayed. But I'll go through the report and provide any updates as we go through. So if you turn to the dashboard that's included in the report, it did get a little bit cut off in my copy, so I'll just make sure it's, yeah, I'll just bring it up here. There we go. So this is just a quick snapshot of what is included within the report. I know council has seen this before. The highlights maybe the revenues there of 15.1 million has been received, not including taxes. So that is just revenues from other sources, as well as our expenses are at 31.3 million as of October 31st. Our investments were up to 27.2. I'll speak to those when we go through the report. We have drawn from the investments a little bit just due to some commitments that have been made since October 31st. And our cash at the end of the quarter, including what is in the high interest savings account, was at 18.5. Our tax collections remain high. We're at over 95% of the 2022 tax levy in collections. I don't have room here on this particular form for the business tax portion, but I wanted to share with council that we are just over 99% collected of the 2022 business tax levy. We have very high collection rate on that. We have, I think, it's around 10,000 in outstanding balances from the 2022 levy, and then we have one payment agreement, and everyone else with arrears has been paid up to date. So we're doing quite well in that area. I just want to share that with council. So as far as our income and budget goes, we're well within where you would expect to be for this time of year, and the tax funds will be reflected and shown as part of the year-end process when we get to that. So I'll just move you to the next page, and we'll just go through a bit of the summary. I'm just going to read from it a little bit because I think there's some good information here and important information. As council is well aware, and as we discussed during the budget process and deliberations, inflation had quite an impact, unanticipated impact throughout 2020, particularly when it came to fuel, supplies, and material costs. So I've noted that within the summary here. So the financial summary reflects a projected surplus of approximately 155,000. As of the last report, some conservative estimates were made. and the surplus was anticipated at just over $351,000. However, as mentioned, due to gas prices, materials, and supply costs, which have continued to rise significantly throughout the year, there's been a reduction to the anticipated surplus. The most notable increase was within the fleet department, with bulk fuel, equipment, materials, supplies, and building costs flows that flow through this department. Although the costs incurred have been recouped through rate charges from other departments, an overall deficit, which is funded from both the rates and, if we need to, will be a transfer from reserves at year end, is estimated at just under $300,000. Therefore, the Public Works Department is looking at a total deficit of approximately $200,000, and this is again primarily due to the rate increases and operational modifications with relation to staffing and job activities. So we are looking at a surplus because much of this overall deficit has been offset by some additional revenues, such as tax penalties, planning and development fees, emergency services fees, and fines from other departments, and small fees from other departments. The utility department is also looking at a surplus of approximately $150,000. However, as per previous council direction, this surplus, or if there was a deficit in the year, is funded from the reserve or transferred to the reserve to make it a full cost recovery department. So although some overages have been projected due to the escalation in prices and inflation, the majority of the department budgets are well within reason. When you're looking at the next page, where I have a financial breakdown, it's all within 90 to 95% or higher. So departments have remained responsible despite the inflation and other impacts that were outside of our control. As council knows and we report, we will continue to monitor expenses and when we close out 2022, the final deficit or surplus will be reported and brought forward to council in early 2023. So on the next page, I just have, I guess, the numbers to reflect those comments. As mentioned, there's, for the most part, we're well within the budget. 99.2% of the overall budget, tax-supported portion of the budget, is where we're sitting, net after all of the deficits and surpluses are managed. And you can see that community services has a bit of a surplus there that is due to some changes within the department, specifically with economic development. Planning and development, majority of that is fee increases, and emergency services is just a little bit of extra revenue that has been generated through emergency calls, fire calls, those kinds of things. So I think at the end of the day, despite what we've seen happen with inflation in the economy, overall I think the county is still in a good position. I feel that everybody has remained responsible, and we have been monitoring and conscious of the costs throughout the year. So just want me to keep going? Okay. I'm not going to focus too much.
Jen?
The next. Oh, sorry.
Want to do now, or maybe we'll wait, Jen.
Okay.
Keep going.
The next page is just another way of looking at the same information that we just reviewed. I've just laid it out a bit differently for information purposes. It's more of a statement of operations. It doesn't reflect the statement of operations that you see in the financials because they incorporate a few different items. This is the overall total budget. I'll skip over the verbiage pieces. I'm sure council went through it. I've included in there all of the capital projects updates to the end of October for both the fleet purchases and the infrastructure and other capital projects, as well as different activities. Under Public Works, we've got the grading year-to-date miles for council's information, and then each of the departments obviously included some information as well. I'm not sure what page it is. Sorry, I was going to just skip down to the financial information update, which is on page 46. Would that be? Oh, sorry, the one above. I think it's 45 of your agenda package. So just quickly, as council, again, through the 2023 budget deliberations, the departments did a full analysis of their budgets. We looked at where we were at with cost to date and considered what increases needed to be implemented based on inflation and and other cost impacts. I've just included in here a bit of a consumer price index that was taken from the Statistics Canada website. This is more or less just for information, but as you can see that as of October, the CPI was sitting at 6.9%. So we knew that. I think we talked about around 7 when we were doing deliberations. So it has increased. And then just below, just for information's sake, just where everything is sitting as far as food, shelter, household costs. On the next page, 46, is just a provincial update. We haven't had any new funding announcements since the last quarterly report, unfortunately. I just wanted to add that when we talk about the municipal, or MSI, which is the Municipal Sustainability Initiative Grant, that stream will be ending in the, they say 2023-2024 period, and we'll be moving into the local government fiscal framework. So that LGFF grant will be a $722 million in capital funding through the province. $382 million of that will go to Calgary and Edmonton, with the other $340 million being distributed amongst the other municipalities throughout the province. They have not identified their funding formula for that, but we should have an announcement of that in early 2023 is what I have heard. We anticipate that the 2023 allowance for the MSI will be similar to 2022, so it'll be just over 1.3 million, and the operating portion will be just over 105,000. As far as the Canadian Community Building Fund, which was formerly the Federal Gas Tax Fund, we do not have any information on the 2023 allocations, but anticipate it to be relatively close to what 2022 was. And behind that page is just a bit of a summary based on the 2022 grant applications that were made, stated that project approval and if we have received the funds as of October 31st. And on the last page is just that investment summary. So on the dashboard, there is some information there. I just want to state that the RBC high interest savings account has been reduced by 5.4 million since October 31st, just due to commitments from council and some payments that have been made in the last couple of months. So that brings that down to 7.98. The balance of those investments do get drawn on throughout the upcoming year because we don't levy taxes until May of 2023 with a due date of July 31st. So in order for operations and capital projects to carry on, we will start to draw on those investments. There is a policy in place, as council probably recalls. It's policy 126, accumulated surplus and reserves, which states that an amount equal to 1 year's worth of municipal taxes is to remain in the investments. So we try to really keep to that even when we're drawing from it up until the next tax payment year. That's the financial report in a nutshell. Mr. Chairman, I don't.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Lauren?
Thank you. Just a quick question on the last page you put up. Is Raymond James just the name of the financial person you use, or is that a company?
Oh, yes, pardon me. They're like Wood Gundy. So they're, yeah.
Okay. And then on page, sorry, I think it's 9, but I'm not sure. Just let me find it. Of course, you can never find what you want when you want it. It was just a question on, you show a certain amount of money you spent already in IT and fleet, but they have no budget.
Oh, so there's one.
Oh, it's on page,
Are these sheets
page
here?
6, I believe. No, it's actually the next one.
Oh, I didn't put a number in there?
No. There's no number there, but
Oh, okay.
I just wondered if there's a particular reason.
No, there isn't a particular
okay.
reason other than maybe I forgot, so I'll review that. But I know that Doug's budget is, I have no concerns with his budget. He stayed within it, and all of the purchases are well within. He has about 70,000 annually for purchases, just if you know, a computer goes down or something outside of the capital portion. A mouse or keyboard or whatever people need, as well as he has his huge, bigger contract portion of the budget to offset the software costs, et cetera. So, but I'll take a look at that and I can update before it's published for the public.
Any other questions?
Good report.
Thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you.
We can move down then to F1.2, the 2023-2025 operating and 2023-2027 capital budget. Jen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased to bring forward the 2023-2025 proposed operating and 2023 to 2027 proposed capital budget for hopefully approval today. These budgets were presented to Council on November 29th and December 1st for review and deliberations. Upon completion of those deliberations and direction and feedback of Council, administration incorporated those, I guess, that direction into the budget that has been presented to you today. As you can see, the 2023 to 2025 budget presented is looking at a proposed tax support increase of 5.125%, or $812,890 before growth. And after growth, it is estimated at 4.034%, or $639,916. So recommendation has been, or two recommendations are proposed, one to approve the operating budget as presented and the other to approve the capital budget as presented. As Council's aware, the Municipal Government Act states that a municipality must approve an operating budget, whether it's interim or final, prior to December 31st of each year. And just for a little bit of background, the budget is utilized as a guide to allow staff to deliver programs and services within the county. The operating budget details projected revenues and expenditures for all of the departments and activities based on level of service within the organization. As in previous years, a 3-year operating and 5-year capital budget has been prepared for all county departments and was presented at deliberations. If Council is not prepared to pass a final operating budget today, an approval of an interim budget would be required in order to provide administration with the authority to proceed with programs and services in the upcoming year, as per the Municipal Government Act. So attached are the summary reports. We have the total tax support by division, followed by showing it again by department. And then we have the consolidated operating and capital budgets, which just gives the totals for each by both department and activity. And then total operating budget information, just to break those out, along with the operating projects summary. And then the capital budget, again, has just been laid out separately, so you can see each of them individually prior to approval.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions from Council? Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one question which I was asked quite a bit is under emergency management. And I think people were kind of misunderstanding, and so was I, to some degree. This position would then, when it comes into effect, all the other municipalities involved, as well as ourselves, would not have a emergency management or a DEM of their own anymore. Is that correct?
I am going to turn that over to Larry or Ann to respond to.
That's correct. I can go into more detail if you want, but you're right. There would not be a need for a DEM. That's the purpose of the regional emergency management.
Yeah, that was the biggest question I was asked. Why are you having two?
Yes,
So,
no, we don't like to duplicate services.
Yeah, but just to be clear. Thank you.
Any other questions? I would entertain a motion then. Klaus?
If I dare do this. So I'll move the recommendation that the 2023 operating budget expenses in the amount of $30,204,555 as outlined in the attachment 1 be approved, and that the 2023 2024 and 2025 operating budget expenses in the amounts of 30,538 for.
30 million.
Oh, sorry, 30, better go. Sorry. 30,538,430,000 and 30,804,015,000 respectively be approved in principle.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved the first recommendation that the 2023 operating budget expenses in the amount of $30,204,555 as outlined in attachment 1 be approved, and that the 2024 and 2025 operating budget expenses in the amounts of $30,538,430 and $30,804,015 respectively be approved in principle. Any further discussion? Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried? You may.
I just want to thank council and administration, but mostly council, because this budget is a true reflection of your strategic vision that you implemented. And a lot of times it's very hard to do the right thing and make those right decisions. So we're very appreciative that council is sticking by their strategic vision with this budget. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ann. Can I get a mover for the capital portion? Mark, John? Mark?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that the 2023 capital budget expenses in the amount of $14,170,000 as outlined in attachment 1 be approved, and that the 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027 capital budget expenses in the amounts of $14,715,000, $8,231,000, $9,688,000, and $8,985,000 respectively be approved in principle.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved the recommendation that the 2023 capital budget expenses in the amount of $14,170,000 as outlined in the attachment 1 be approved, and that the 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027 capital budget expenses in the amounts of $14,715,000, $8,231,000, $9,688,000, and $8,985,000 respectively be approved in principle. Any further discussion? Not, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. I would just echo what Ann said. I think council is appreciative of the budget that was brought forward. It was a straightforward and a common sense, I think, budget, in the sense that we realize the constraints that are being placed upon us from largely outside forces. So thank you for bringing something to us that essentially had a lot of the fat trimmed and was something that we could really sink our teeth into. I thank council for their work during the budget deliberations. I think it was a productive process. I hope everyone took something away positive from that process. I think we had some frank discussions, really honed in on a few things where there were areas of concern, flushed those areas out, and I think we have a budget that, given the context of the time that we're living in, I think it makes sense, and it allows us to maintain that level of service that I think we're all looking to achieve for our residents and businesses. So thank you very much for your work, Jen, and for staff as a whole for all of your work on that. I know it's a year-round process, but I know November and December are a pressing time, so thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Klaus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with the increase that we have here, what we should probably be telling our taxpayers is before or after growth? After growth, right? Correct? That'd be 4%.
After growth.
Yeah. No, I mean that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got,
Go ahead, Ann. Yep.
We've got documentation prepared to go out to in anticipation that the budget would be passed today, so we will be putting that out shortly.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you. I have one more for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
not off the book.
Not quite out yet.
You
You're
need to
stuck
do
with
the
me
ne-
for one more.
You can do the next one too then, Jen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So we'll move
drafted
down
it.
on our agendas then to F1.3, the Foothills Little Bow Association meeting resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This next report was based on some direction that was provided to administration from council at the November 7th, council meeting where yourself, Reeve Campbell, and Councillor Van Essen brought forward a request of council regarding putting forth a draft resolution to the province to consider unfreezing farmland assessments. The resolution is to be brought forward at the Foothills Little Bow Municipal Association meeting in January for consideration. With some help from Candace, I did my best to draft a resolution. I guess if to give any recommendation from an administrative point of view, I would just hope that this is just a draft recommendation that I put together based on the direction of council. So if it isn't precise or doesn't have incorporated the message you're hoping to get across, please amend it accordingly. But I'll read what we have drafted so far. So whereas the province of Alberta sets the rules and regulations for all municipalities within the province, including property assessment guidelines, and whereas the province of Alberta has frozen farmland assessment values since 1995, and whereas rural municipalities, are unable to assess farmland within their municipalities based on inflation and or current market values in an effort to levy tax dollars that could be used to support infrastructure and assist in offsetting annual tax levy increases. And whereas rural municipalities should have the autonomy, thank you, dedication, Brea, an option to adjust farmland assessments as they do with other assessment classes. And therefore be it resolved that the rural municipalities of Alberta urge the province of Alberta to unfreeze farmland assessments and allow municipalities to utilize their discretion to increase farmland assessments as they see fit in an effort to equalize property assessment amongst all assessment classes. And then I provided a second option, or be it resolved that the rural municipalities of Alberta urge the province of Alberta to unfreeze and increase farmland assessments to bring them closer to market in an effort to equalize property assessments amongst all assessment classes. So I've included the resolution that was provided at the November 7th meeting, but I did just want to go through a little bit of background as well for council and the public. So through the provincial policy, agricultural land assessments have been frozen since 1995. If farmland were to be assessed at or closer to market value, farmland taxes could be levied at a more fair amount. The current assessment process provides a significant tax break to large livestock operations and other intensive farming enterprises that are essentially commercial operations. This tax subsidy has created sustainability implications to many rural municipalities. Due to the assessment freeze, there are limitations on the ability to adjust farmland assessments accordingly and or at a rural municipality's discretion in effort to raise additional tax dollars that can support operations and future infrastructure needs, specifically with additional uncertainty around future grant funding. In 2016, Lethbridge County passed a bylaw to allow for business tax to be levied on intensive agricultural operations based on the number of animal units at each operation. The purpose of this business tax was to ensure that users, intensive livestock operators, are helping to fund the repairs and maintenance related to the roads and bridges that they use. Lethbridge County is home to over 500,000, and I think it's actually even higher than that, possibly, head of cattle, and has the highest population of livestock in the county, as well as thousands of chickens, hogs, and sheep, putting our livestock numbers at well over 1 million. In addition, the county has a high percentage of irrigated cropland, such as grain, canola, sugar beets, potatoes, corn, legumes, and other varieties of crops that thrive due to irrigation, all of which generate heavy truck traffic. The business tax collected to date has been utilized to fund the annual debenture payment on a $13 million debt taken to calcium stabilize 138 miles of gravel roads and replace or repair 154 bridges within the county, as well as paved road rehabilitation. Of course, this was brought forward at council's direction, but there's always the option to amend the proposed resolution as you see fit to ensure that it precisely conveys all of the key points that you hope to get across to RMA through the resolution.
Thank you very much for your work on this, Jen.
Thank you.
I'd open it up to council. Eric and John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The background information, will that be similarly submitted at Foothills Little Bow as part of our background information, or is this just, okay. If so, I don't believe it conveys the intent, and I see it coming across as, current assessment gives a significant tax break to large livestock operations and other intensive farming enterprises. And really, I don't think that's relevant to what the intent is. The intent is that we can adjust assessment to inflation. And it's not so much that to heavy users, light users, it's just we're not able to adjust assessment as needed. I think our targeting heavy users is what the business tax was, and this is more so just on that it can be moved with farmland inflation.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Councillor Van Essen, but we can draft the backgrounder so that it meets the intent of council before it goes to Foothills Little Bow. Okay?
Okay, and then secondly, the or clause, I think is redundant.
Well, that would be an either or, Eric. If you didn't feel comfortable with the first 4 blocks there, I guess we could move the second one instead. So it'd be one or the other.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Any other comments? John, did you?
Well, my comment was the or situation, whether that resolution was to give the, basically 2 proposals to Foothills Little Bow, or we were going to make a recommendation of one or the other. So that's been clarified.
Lauren, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I realize the intent of this and the reason for putting it forward, this will be an extremely hard sell, even at Foothills Little Bow. When you hit RMA, it will be even more difficult, especially in the northern municipalities, because this is like the sacred cow, the farmland assessment rate. I personally think that it would be better to ask for class adjustments in the tax structure. So similar to what the business tax does, rather than ask for an overall change of the assessment. So for instance, if you have a very intensive agricultural operation, it should be recognized for that and for the amount of use it does, or use it has in your municipality, rather than trying to change the whole status. That's my opinion. And I can tell you, we have asked for this many times, and it is a very difficult sell to the majority of the members of RMA.
Plus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I partially agree with you, because I know it's going to be a really difficult sell. But I think the intent was that the inflation on the farmland has gone up tremendously, and especially in, I think probably more in our area, the southern area, than the northern area. And I think that's where we're going to have the trouble. But I think that, if we go by the intent that we have, that the inflation went up that much for farmland, I think it's an okay ask to let them realize that we cannot stay in the rut like we did before in the 90s. Because I think we're in a different situation now than that we were in those years.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I 100% agree with you that this is a tough ask, and it's going to be a tough sell in Foothills and with RMA, and talking with some of the northern councillors when I've had a chance to discuss this with them and chat with them. That being said, I think it's worth taking the first kick at the cat, and it's worth the ask, and then I think it's worth keep asking. Because, at the end of the day, this is something that is causing a significant problem, and I think it really just needs to be conveyed to everybody that we're not asking for the moon here, we're just asking for our own autonomy on it. So, and convey to some of our northern counties that this is a situation where they can then make up their own mind of what they want to do, as opposed to the legislation being forced upon us by the province.
Thank you, John. Any other comments, questions? I think I think you well said, John. I think it's about that, from my perspective, it's about that addressing an issue that I think everybody knows is an issue. I agree with all the comments. I think it is an uphill battle, but in the conversations that we had with ministers at ministers at RMA, I think they acknowledge that there is an issue here. Provincially, they feel their hands are a little bit tied, and they would like to see this come from the grassroots, from the municipal level. That was the comments that I think that Councillor Van Essen and I received. I would support the recommendation of going down this road, but I do understand the challenges that lie ahead, and that there is obviously we have to be cognizant of how we address this in the public and the messaging around it. I think it's not about going whole hog, but like I said, having that autonomy, like John mentioned, to control our own fate a little bit more, and to address the reality of inflation. Any other comments or questions? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm assuming now we need to make a decision on which one of these recommendations we want to move. I would be more comfortable with the first wordings than the second.
Would you like to make that motion, John?
Happily. I'm assuming you don't want me to read this all out, with the one correction of the third paragraph being municipalities,
Yes,
where the
thank
typo is there.
Okay, I can take a stab at that then, if that's all right. Whereas the province of Alberta so John has moved the recommendation that whereas the province of Alberta sets the rules and regulations for all municipalities within the province, including property assessment guidelines, and whereas the province of Alberta has frozen farmland assessment values since 1995, and whereas rural municipalities are unable to assess farmland within their municipalities based on inflation and/or current market values in an effort to levy tax dollars that could be used to support infrastructure and assist in offsetting annual tax levy increases. And whereas rural municipalities should have the autonomy and option to adjust farmland assessments as they do with other assessment classes. Now therefore it be resolved that the rural municipalities of Alberta urge the province of Alberta to unfreeze farmland assessments and allow municipalities to utilize their discretion to increase farmland assessments as they see fit in an effort to equalize property assessments amongst all assessed classes. Any further discussion? Warren?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two questions. In the now therefore it be resolved, what were you substituting to allow municipalities? Is that, what did you use in that word?
There was you were talking about the spelling mistake and whereas rural municipal, we just correct that to and whereas rural municipalities.
So, okay, so this would have no effect on the whatever they call them themselves, the urban guys who have farmland within a urban municipality. Is that still considered to be farmland under this? How does that work? Do you know?
If it was assessed as farmland, if it was identified that way, then yes, it would have an impact on that.
So that would go to them too then?
Oh, are the Alberta municipalities? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant within our municipality.
For instance, I'll give you an example. Along 43rd Street, there's some farmland still being farmed that's in the city limits. So is that?
It's still
Would-
assessed as farmland.
So perhaps it should read and whereas municipalities as opposed
Yes.
to, that's what you're suggesting, Lauren?
Okay, I
Yes.
see.
Okay.
Okay, and the other question I had was, sorry, I can't remember what it was now.
Sorry, I don't even get what you just.
Scratch, so in the third and whereas, scratch rural, and it would just say and whereas municipalities are unable? Go ahead, Lauren.
And it was at the last whereas, and it says, to adjust farmland assessments as they do other assessment classes. You don't have total control over every assessment class anymore, do you? We don't do machinery and equipment and machinery
DIP,
anymore, right?
designated industrial properties, the province assesses all of those.
So.
And there's a formula for machinery and equipment that has to be used. But by that, I mean, definitely have the wording as you feel it suits the resolution best, but I think the thought there was just that with market value and assessments, municipalities have the control to adjust in that manner. It does get sent to the province and has to be within their 95, I think, or 5% over or below what they consider to be reasonable, but. So we could, if there's concern there, I could say, as they do with other assessment classes within their control or something along those lines. I'm not sure if that better suits.
Go ahead,
Mr.
John.
Chair, would it be appropriate to maybe just take that whole last bit out in an effort to equalize property assessment or amongst all other assessment classes?
That's an option as well.
Because basically then it would just read that now there be resolved that the rural municipalities of Alberta urge the province of Alberta unfreeze farmland assessment and allow municipalities utilize their discretion to increase farmland assessments as they see fit, period, full stop.
Not the classes.
Yeah, because I mean, in an effort to equalize property assessments among other classes kind of muddies the waters a little bit from what I'm seeing.
It's up to you, John. It's your motion.
Well, I'd happily do that. And then I happily friendly amend my motion to remove rural references there and just say municipalities.
Then also, under the last whereas clause, we remove, so it's gonna end with, and option to adjust farmland assessments.
Yeah. If you do the one, you gotta do the other one.
Which one are you talking about?
The last whereas
Third
clause?
Rural municipality autonomy to do just
Oh, yeah.
farmland assessments
I get it.
as they do with all their,
Yeah. So
So
here,
you'd have to stop at assessment.
Do you have it, Candace?
yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would be fine with that. So do you want me to read this as,
Do you want to do it, do you have it, oh, sorry, just. was
oh,
there another-
you've got it? Good.
So the whole thing will say, whereas the province of Alberta sets the rules and regulations for all municipalities in the province, including property assessment guidelines, and whereas the province of Alberta has frozen farmland assessment values since 1995, and whereas municipalities are unable to assess farmland within their municipalities based on inflation and/or current market values, in an effort to levy tax dollars that could be used to support infrastructure and assist in offsetting annual tax levy increases, and whereas municipalities should have the autonomy and option to adjust farmland assessments, now therefore be resolved that the rural municipalities of Alberta are may urge the province of Alberta to unfreeze farmland assessments and allow municipalities to utilize their discretion to increase farmland assessments as they see fit.
That would be my resolution.
Okay. Any further discussion? I will call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, Candace, and thank you very much, Jen.
thank you and happy holidays.
Yeah, have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Safe flights.
Thank you.
Would we like to take we'll take a 10-minute break and come back at 10:40? Thank you, everyone. We'll call the meeting back to order at 10:43 this morning, and we can move on our agenda to Community Services, F2, F2.1, Animal Control Bylaw Amendment. I would ask Larry to come forward. Morning, Larry.
Does Larry know about the bylaw?
Not much. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Council. You will recall back at the November 17th Council meeting, direction was given to administration to prepare some draft amendments to the animal control bylaw that would allow for the keeping of up to 5 animals, or 5 animal units, pardon me, in hamlets. Currently, the animal control bylaw does not permit animals above cats and dogs in hamlets, with the exception of horses on parcels 2 acres or larger. So we have gone to work and made some proposed amendments, and we'll present those to you here today. The options and alternatives for council to consider, of course, are to simply maintain the status quo, keep the bylaw in its current form. If that were to occur, and if that were council's direction, obviously nothing would change, and hamlets would still be prohibited, or property owners within hamlets would still be prohibited from having animal units, farm animals essentially, on their properties, again with that one exception of horses on parcels 2 acres or larger. The drawback to that, of course, is that might be viewed by some members of the community as being a little bit overly restrictive, especially on some of those parcels in a few of the hamlets that tend to be a little bit larger. Another option, and what we're proposing and bringing forth based on your direction previously, is that we do amend the bylaw so that up to 5 animal units could be kept on parcels in a hamlet based on parcel size. Another option, of course, is to change that number, any number that council deemed appropriate. But based on our previous discussion, I think administration got the sense that maybe limiting it to no more than 5, regardless of parcel size, even on a larger parcel of, say, 15 or 18 acres, no more than 5 might be a fair and kind of safe way to go, and a kind of nice balance between not allowing any and opening it up completely. One drawback potentially to allowing farm animals in hamlets is some of the residents in hamlets, maybe they live in hamlets because they really prefer a more kind of residential environment. And hamlets are those little sort of settlements, mini villages, if you will, and they maybe don't want to see or smell or have the negative repercussions if there are too many farm animals in their immediate vicinities. So our recommendation today, Mr. Chairman, is that Animal Control Bylaw 22-020 be read a first time, and that hamlet residents be consulted on the proposed changes. And with respect to this bylaw, I'll just point out a couple other things, and that is, although we're using the word to amend the bylaw, really it's cleaner always to simply, if this bylaw proceeds, to eradicate, kind of repeal the previous bylaw and present a brand new one. That way there isn't kind of a core bylaw with a number of amendments down the line, and it gets very confusing. So we would just propose that if this bylaw were to proceed, the current bylaw would no longer exist. This would in effect be a new bylaw, but look very similar to the previous one with those incorporated changes that I've presented to you. Moving to the bylaw directly itself, I'll just point out the highlights, I guess, of what is being proposed here. One simple change, but I think important, is that we've added a definition for the word parcel to include a single lot or 2 or more contiguous lots owned by one owner. There's lots of examples where, maybe there are 3 kind of residential lots side by side. They're all less than an acre in and of themselves. They wouldn't be permitted to have any farm animal units on those properties, but because they're contiguous, they kind of function as one large lot.
Can you just explain the word contiguous?
Certainly.
Thank you.
What's a synonym for contiguous? Attached. Again, sort of all, side by side, have a common boundary. Thank you. For sure. Thank you. Yeah. So that's one change. Second change is, the kind of meat and potatoes of what is being proposed here. So we're proposing to add a separate table that would address the keeping of farm animal units on parcels in hamlets. And what we have is it essentially mirrors what's in there for other animals. However, the significant change is that on parcels 4 acres or larger in hamlets, again, going back to the maximum number, we are proposing that no more than 5 animal units would be allowed there. Whereas for outside of hamlets, larger parcels, of course, can keep more animals. But we propose, again, based on what we've heard from council thus far, to limit it to a maximum of 5 for parcels 4 acres or larger located within hamlets. Looking down, section 4, we just went through this as well with our community peace officer, who often and typically is the one that might address any problems that might arise from the keeping of animals that might be creating problems for neighbors. We've stated no owner shall keep or harbor more than the permitted number of animal units on a parcel in a subdivision or hamlet, just to be clear. Also that feces or manure must not be stockpiled in any way. Obviously that could create a problem. And in the current bylaw, it states that dead animals must be promptly and properly disposed of within 48 hours. And we're proposing to change that kind of to immediately after death wording, just to kind of show the urgency and the importance of removing any dead carcasses that may be experienced or pile up there, let's say. No animal bedding, feed, feathers, or fur shall be permitted to blow onto other properties or create a nuisance in any way. We have experienced a little bit of that in a couple spots where there's some residential owners who really like to keep an impeccable green lawn, for example, and they're kind of downwind from other properties that might have some animals and some debris and detritus, if you will, animal feed, feathers, whatever shall blow in their direction. Prohibitions, again, just remove the restrictions of keeping animals in hamlets to comply with what the rest of the bylaw states. And then the other point or part that I'll just maybe point out is on the very last page, Schedule A, offenses and penalties. Previously, we had 3 columns and 3 penalties were in place. The first penalty or offense would be a $250 fine, a second penalty or offense within 3 months, $500, and a third or subsequent offense within 12 months, $1,000. Again, in kind of going over this with our peace officer in particular, his view was that, and I tend to agree with him, that, if we got to a situation where there was a third offense in a month, well, clearly something's wrong, and I'd like to think that we would have dealt with that problem previously, and it would never get to the point where there's a third offense within a 1-year period. So we're proposing just to kind of narrow that down a little bit. First offense could be subject to up to a $250 penalty, and a second or subsequent one within 12 months, $500. And as well, you'll see there, if you're on that final page of the draft bylaw, that we've just broken down a little bit more specifically the specific offenses. And again, through our peace officers' experience and going to court and seeing how judges and courts deal with these sort of things, apparently it's more efficient and more appropriate, I guess we could say, to specifically state what the offense is and have a corresponding fine or penalty with that. One thing as well, Mr. Chairman, if I can point you back to the recommendation on page 1 of the report. Maybe I'll just read it out here. Lost my page, sorry. I did read it out previously, pardon me. Just we're looking for first reading and that hamlet residents be consulted. And what we've thought about with respect to that is that right now, immediately before Christmas, clearly I think we'd all agree not a good time to go out to residents and ask them to, complete a survey or ask them their perspective on this. So we would propose that we would wait until January and then open something up, another sort of short survey, and give people a number of different ways to communicate with the county what their thoughts are with respect to the keeping of animals in hamlets, and then bring that back to council. The results, perhaps in February, maybe the second meeting in February, something like that, with a proposal, again, depending on the feedback, to potentially consider second and third readings of the bylaw. So I think that sums it up, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larry.
You're welcome.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that it's a good proposal for the hamlets, but that makes me think down there, do we have something in place for the acreage owners in the county?
Yes, under this.
Because we did have an issue, several years ago down there, a person northeast of Lethbridge down there, he had a small acreage, but the amount of cattle on that one was quite a bit.
Right, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Zeenstra.
Just one clarity there.
Yeah, you betcha. And so the same rules would apply. In the rural agriculture district, we don't have those same limits under the animal control bylaw, but in residential areas and acreages, that the bylaw applies. So it does keep it contained. Yeah.
John and Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A bylaw of this type, would this not require a public hearing?
No.
Okay.
'Cause, again, if I may, I mean, it is related to the use of land, but it's not a land use bylaw proper, for example, that our planning and development department refer to always as being the land use bylaw. This is a regulatory bylaw, although it does apply to land. And that's, again, I think why we're proposing that we do some consultation with the community, and that is also based on our public participation policy. Arguably, this could have an impact, maybe a noteworthy impact on some people, those who want to have animals, maybe conversely, those who don't want to have animals in hamlets. So we're at least proposing some level of engagement, which we would then present to council to help, give you the best information to make an informed decision.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Councillor Zeenstra on the request about acreages, under the regulations, that chart looks like it's applicable up to 10 hectares, 24.7 acres, and then it controls how many are allowed on an acreage. So it's the same chart, other than it's not limited at 4 acres. Question for if they're under the limit, are they at 0, or is it just not allowed? Let's say, so we have chickens, 15 chickens, and if they don't hit 1 acre, are they completely prohibited from having chickens on site? Or if there's 5 of them, it doesn't make a unit and it's tolerable?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Van Essen, good question. Honestly, in black and white terms, the way the bylaw is written currently, and even with what is being proposed under the new or amended bylaw, they would not be allowed to have farm animals or anything other than a cat and dog, essentially, roaming their property, let's say, on properties that are under 1 acre. So they would be outright prohibited. Face value, certainly, the county doesn't go looking for these issues. And if someone lived in such a manner that they did have 4 or 5 chickens and it bothered nobody, I guess it comes down to that question, if a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear? So, yeah. So if that answers your question.
It does, yeah.
Technically, no, they wouldn't be permitted.
And I think I don't have an interest to address it unless our public engagement brings it back with a great amount of thing. On removing of dead animals or any contravention to the bylaw, so we've asked to remove 48 hours. Does that then essentially just put it directly up to the bylaw officer's discretion that your pet whatever is now deceased 6 hours ago and hey, you haven't removed it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that, this is written that way, that it should be gone within 48 hours, but it's not up to the owner of the animals to decide when the animals are going to be picked up by the rendering. So I think that's where we go out of our jurisdiction, that we do not have the ability to say, you got to pick my animal up in 24 hours. Because if you're on a holidays or long weekends, or whatever, and they don't work, they can't be picked up. So I think we should probably just, simplify that and just leave it that way, because like with us too, I mean, we have that regularly, that you have, it can be picked up, so I mean, and you can't put 48 hours on there, really. So maybe just take the time limit off.
It is removed.
Mark?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. No, I'm fine with taking it when the animal dies, because what would happen, I mean, common sense would dictate that if there was an animal died and had been sitting there for a while, that's when the bylaw officer would go. He's not going to go out there and see an animal down. But you would say, look, we've found this cow die yesterday or today. We've talked to the rendering plant. They can't come till Tuesday. Okay, thanks. They've made the effort. I think what that does is if you do the 48 hours, what it was, then after 48 hours it's still sitting there, then the bylaw officer goes in to talk to the people and they say, oh, well, I've got to phone the rendering plant. Then all this does is just tighten it up. So I don't see an issue leaving it to say, when the animal passes away, then you make arrangements to have it removed. So
I've got Lauren, John, and Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a question under chickens. Larry, most municipalities don't allow roosters. Have you talked about that? Because they are very noisy. Well, no, they're very noisy.
Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through to Councillor Hickey. No, we haven't specifically, but, I think we could look at that under the noise bylaw, if it came to it. And there's got to be some wording in here in the bylaw in any event that it can't be problematic or, a disturbance or annoyance to neighbors. Just looking through here, see if there's a specific section. But, I mean, it's a good point and, point well taken, but we haven't differentiated or addressed that specifically in the bylaw as it stands. But if someone has a rooster or roosters and they're waking the entire neighborhood up in maybe a condensed area at 5 a.m. 365 days a year, I think we would have the means to address that through the noise and nuisance bylaw.
And one other thing, I noticed in your schedule of offenses, there's nothing about fencing in there. Does the Fencing Act of Alberta apply to that, or what? Because some people have a tendency not to keep things up, and it probably should be something that is somewhere indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, through to Councillor Hickey. I'm not especially familiar with the Fencing Act. I know it exists. My understanding is it applies broadly speaking to rural areas in particular. I don't know if Supervisor of Planning and Development or anyone else has any greater knowledge with that. We haven't addressed it specifically. We may say must be contained, something like that, wording of that nature, but we don't specifically refer to that act. And in reviewing this, and as far as I know, the original bylaw when it was established 5 or so years ago, I'm not aware that that was addressed either. But again, to your point, surely if people do have animals, if this bylaw proceeds as proposed and animals are kept in hamlets, they can't be letting them run all over neighbors' properties and so on.
Yeah, I can maybe answer that.
Thank you.
I had to deal with the Fencing Act recently.
Okay, great.
So the Fencing Act is pretty broad. It's really doesn't have a whole lot of teeth in it in terms of who the authority is. So just with that, I think it might be a good idea for us to put maybe just even a clause in there saying that that fences have to be maintained and well maintained, just as a kind of an overarching comment more than anything, because like David doesn't really have the authority to or it's hard under the Fencing Act to do any enforcement from what I've heard. So that's kind of my 2 bits on the Fencing Act.
Thank you, Hillary.
Okay, these two first. John, Klaus, and Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just sort of moving back to the dead animal issue. The 48 hours in the proposed bylaw is no longer 48 hours, if I'm reading it correctly, because it says that dead animals must be promptly and properly removed or disposed of immediately after the death to minimize odor, flies, and transmission of disease. So in this bylaw, there isn't a 48 hours.
I don't think we can, I don't think we can put a time limit in there. That's what I said before already, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fencing, so I just pulled up the act as well. And if it is in one person's interest to have an animal, have a fence erected, I think there's somewhere in there that, you know, both sides contribute, but really the person who wants to contain animals is definitely going to be responsible. Or I think that could be somehow, yeah, added in there.
Clause and then Lauren?
With this all said here, and I'm sure we're gonna get some more pointers from the residents that do have the animals and that wanna make some minor changes to this, so I wanna recommend that the Animal Control Bylaw 20-20 be read the first time and that the Hamlet residents be consulted on the proposed changes.
Thank you, Clause. Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just further to the Fencing Act, that's where it is kind of vague, because technically you're supposed to keep your animals on your own property, but the argument against the Fencing Act has always been, well, if I don't have animals, I don't want his in my place, why should I have to pay for half a fence? So that's a very controversial thing about it, and it's not a good, it's not well written.
Larry, just one question. This came forward largely was citizen-driven, this issue. Do you feel that in the way the bylaw is currently being presented to council, do you believe it captures what the request was from the public?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Chairman. Broadly speaking, yes, and I've had regular communications with the individuals who brought this forward initially to council's attention. I think back in the mid-spring or early summer, whatever it was, and part of how we've drafted this, I mean, it wasn't to entirely capture them. We tried to be reasonable, and objective and be fair to everybody. But they are an example of property owners who do own some lots that are smaller, less than 1 acre in size, but side by side. So, without, tailoring something specifically to these individuals, we've tried to capture that, and this will do that as well. So, again, answer to your question, yes.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
Clause has moved the recommendation that Animal Control Bylaw 22-020 be read a first time and that Hamlet residents be consulted on the proposed changes. With that, would it just be targeted to Hamlet residents, or would it be a general opportunity for residents at large?
Right, and good question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I did talk about that with our communications coordinator, and we kind of hummed and hawed. It might be more challenging to target specifically Hamlet residents, and perhaps even unfair. Others might argue, well, if this goes ahead, then they're going to open it up more for subdivisions or other lands. So I do have an interest in that. So what we're kind of, our line of thought is when we prepare some communications and some, basically survey questions, I think, give people the opportunity to provide input. We'll have a question there, do you reside in a hamlet? And hopefully, people will be fair and straightforward and say yes or no, and we can, use that information. But although, it is targeted for hamlets, because that will be where the biggest impact might be if there are changes, I think it's maybe limited to restrict it exclusively to hamlet residents, through a mail out or something, which we could do. But we're kind of thinking to go a little broader and let the community at large have some input, if that's acceptable.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on that regard, and I just had a thought about it, because this bylaw actually encompasses hamlets and residential subdivisions within the county. So
Exactly.
there doesn't appear in my mind to be any significant change to the meat of the bylaw when it comes to residential subdivisions. So from that standpoint, it's pretty much a status quo and a flow through. The change on this really is concentrated around hamlets, if I'm reading and understanding it right.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through to Councillor Kurbis. Yes, I would say yes. However, arguably, we're changing the offenses and penalties, being a little bit more refined and specific with that. And I'm not sure where council landed with respect to keeping the 48 hours or immediately after death clause with respect to removing dead carcasses in there, but arguably, if that's a change as well, could apply to residential subdivisions, and therefore those folks, legitimately should maybe have some input into the bylaw if they so choose to participate as well. So,
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is there a difference between an acreage and a group country residential for the bylaw?
No,
No?
no, I looked at her, I
Oh.
answered.
It applies to any parcel under 25 acres.
Okay, thank you. So Klaus has moved the recommendation that the Animal Control Bylaw 22-020 be read a first time and the Hamlet residents be consulted on the proposed changes. Any further discussion? Not, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Larry.
you're welcome. Thank you, Council.
We can move down to F2.2, Regionalized Emergency Management Program ACP Grant Application. Go ahead, Larry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. 2 weeks ago today, on the December 1st council meeting, council received a presentation from our Director of Emergency Management, contracted service through the town of Coaldale, regarding a proposed regional emergency management program. And the budget implications for that were discussed and reviewed by council at the budget discussions and have been provided to council in an email summary of what that might entail as well. Our recommendation today simply is that Lethbridge County Council support the town of Picture Butte's application under the Alberta Community Partnership Grant Program for the creation and operation of a regionalized emergency management program involving the municipalities of Coaldale, Colehurst, Lethbridge County, Nobleford, Picture Butte, and Barrens. And our reasons for that recommendation, Mr. Chairman, in simple terms, the town of Picture Butte is taking the lead on that grant application, and obviously we're hoping, and by all accounts, everyone I've spoken to and talked to with respect to this is optimistic that we would be able to receive, or the town would receive, a grant to help support the costs of transitioning from our current regional or our current emergency management program to that more regionalized format and structure. And participating in that program that includes those urban municipalities, we believe will enhance the region's and the county's capacity and ability to respond more effectively and efficiently to kind of larger scale disasters, which seem to be the flavor of the day with climate change and what have you, in addition to other things like train derailments that occur from time to time in our region. And the county's participation in this, we believe, is supported through at least two of council's strategic pillars in the strategic plan, and those being governance and relationships. And at the time of writing of this report, our indications, at least unofficially from council, that there was, broadly speaking, support for this, as well with the operating budget that was adopted earlier in this meeting. The funds for county's participation in this regionalized emergency management program have been approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Welcome.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to show that we do appreciate our smaller urbans within the county, and we need to do everything we can to try to support them. So therefore, I'd like to move that Lethbridge County Council support the town of Picture Butte's application under the Alberta Community Partnership Grant Program for the creation and operation of a regionalized emergency management program involving the municipalities of Coaldale, Colehurst, Lethbridge County, Nobleford, Picture Butte, and Barrens.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion? John has moved the recommendation that Lethbridge County Council supports the town of Picture Butte's application under the Alberta Community Partnership Grant Program for the creation and operation of a regionalized emergency management program involving the municipalities of Coaldale, Colehurst, Lethbridge County, Nobleford, Picture Butte, and Barrens. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Larry.
You're welcome. Thank you, council.
We can move down into F3, administration. We have an invitation, F3.1, invitation, Coaldale Chamber of Commerce Award and Appreciation Banquet, January 28th, 2023. And we have Maddie Watson. Maddie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Council. So Reeve Torrey Campbell has received an invitation to the Coaldale Chamber of Commerce Award and Appreciation Banquet on January 28th, 2023 at the Town of Coaldale Civic Square. The event will recognize the contributions of individuals, nonprofit groups, and businesses to the Town of Coaldale. Single tickets are $90 and a table of 8 is $600. Looking back, councillors have typically attended this event in the past. So the recommendation is that council determine if Reeve Torrey Campbell may be authorized to attend the Coaldale Chamber of Commerce 41st Annual Awards and Appreciation Banquet on January 28th, 2023.
Thank you, Maddie. Any questions? John?
Is there any other interest from any other councillors that would wish to attend this?
That's like one of the committees I sit on, so if you want to send two, or just one.
I would like to move that county council authorize any councillors that may wish to attend the Coaldale Chamber of Commerce 41st Annual Awards and Appreciation Banquet on January 28th, 2023, be authorized to do so.
Thank you, John. John has moved that any member of council be authorized to attend the Coaldale Chamber of Commerce 41st Annual Awards and Appreciation Banquet on January 28th, 2023. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Maddie.
Thank you.
Moving down, F3.2, SAWA request for letter of support, ACP grant application. Morning, Ann.
Oops. We've received a request from SAWA, Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association, for support of their ACP grant application. They've requested that Lethbridge County provide a letter of support for their ACP application for grant funding to complete their memorandum of understanding to move forward with a preferred vendor in partnership to develop the 300,000 ton energy from waste facility at the Newell County landfill site. And this is very exciting news that this is moving forward. And if Councillor Vanderveen has anything to add, I would welcome it.
No, I think we had the last report from the last meeting that I think every councillor got that, and I think it is very exciting because we have the expression of interest, and that's basically behind us. We have there's one that was picked, and it's all I mean, we can't say anything about that yet because we never know what's going to be happening with that. So, we hope to have some great news like come January, because it was put over to January because of certain circumstances that they couldn't get together with each other. So, and now this is, every time we think this is the last funding that we need, but there's so much going on, and I think in the last 10, 12 years that this has been going on, it was, I don't know, $1 million or something, or what, the amount of grants that we needed to move on with this, and so now we are really really happy to move forward this. So I think I would love to have this moved. So shall I move it? Okay, then I'll move that the Lethbridge County provide a letter of support to SAWA for their Alberta Community Partnership application for the grant funding to complete the memorandum of understanding to move forward with the preferred vendor in partnership to develop the 300,000 ton energy from waste facility at the Newell County landfill site.
Thank you, Claus. Any further discussion? Claus has moved the recommendation that Lethbridge County provide a letter of support to SAWA for their Alberta Community Partnership ACP application for grant funding to complete the memorandum of understanding to move forward with a preferred vendor in partnership to develop the 300,000 ton energy from waste facility at the Newell County landfill site. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Ann.
Okay.
And moving down now to infrastructure, another ACP grant. Devin, good morning.
Good morning, Council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a ACP grant support for the Colehurst Regional Water and Wastewater Master Plan. So the town of Colehurst is planning to complete an ACP grant-funded regional water and wastewater master plan. This study would analyze the town's existing water and wastewater systems, including condition assessments, capacity analysis, and an updated 10-year infrastructure master plan. The study would also analyze capacity within the areas around Colehurst as identified in the intermunicipal development plan, particularly in that pre-con area north of Colehurst. As the town continues to expand and grow, the demands on their infrastructure continue to increase. By completing this study, the town will have a better understanding of their required capital upgrades to support the town's growth and potential servicing within the county. And just as a backgrounder, if you're wondering why all these ACP applications are coming forth, the deadline is tomorrow for submittal, so that's why you're seeing a lot of these come forward. So, and with that, my recommendation is that County Council supports the town of Colehurst as the managing partner, submission of a 2022/23 Alberta Community Partnership Grant application in support of the Colehurst Regional Water Wastewater Master Plan.
Thank you, Devin. Any questions? Lauren, Mark, John?
I understand why Colehurst wants to do this. Thank you, Mr. Chair, by the way. I fail to see what the county will really gain out of this until we solve our problems with the people across the street. We have no water and we have no access to wastewater. So, you know, you can talk about it all you want, but until we actually have the ability to connect, I don't really see the purpose in going through with this at the present time.
Okay, and if I may, it would be for more, I guess, that having a plan in place when those services become available with their colleagues across the street there. At least there would be something in a report or on paper, so when that servicing becomes available, we can act upon it.
Mark? Okay. John, did you?
Well, I was going to make the motion as well, but just sort of in response to Councillor Hickey's comment on that. I appreciate that, yeah, we definitely run up against a brick wall across the street, but reports and situations like this can and do have the potential of giving us some further leverage in the future on that. So I see value and merit in it. And I will let Mark make that motion.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Reed Campbell. I'd like to move that the County Council supports the town of Colehurst managing partner submission of a 2022-23 Alberta Community Partnership Grant application in support of the Colehurst Regional Water Wastewater Master Plan.
Thank you, Mark. Ann, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Kurbis and Councillor Hickey's comments, and I just think it's really, from my perspective, exciting, if I can use that word, that everybody's starting to talk about this, and it's really important that we get these plans in place. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Ann. So Mark has moved the recommendation that County Council supports the town of Colehurst as the managing partner, submission of a 2022-23 Alberta Community Partnership Grant application in support of the Colehurst Regional Water / Wastewater Master Plan. Any further discussion? Call the question. Oh, sorry. Jeff?
Yeah, my opinion is somewhat like what Lauren brought up to, you know, you want to vote against because we didn't have exactly the cooperation what we've been asking for with the city down there. However, if we vote against this or whatever, you know, we're certainly not going to help the progress of what we're trying to make with them. So, yeah, and that's why I'm going to vote in favor.
Thanks, Morris. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
And maybe just on that note, I know as someone that's myself, I've often critical of the province and some of the downloading and the things that we've seen, but as we can see from our last several meetings, we're fortunate that these ACP grants are available. I think they're a tremendous resource in collaborating, and as one of our pillars and one of our something that we've really tried to work on is those relationships and the region, and I think that we're living that through these ACP grant applications and partnering both to the west and the east, and I find it very encouraging. So thank you to staff for partnering with these municipalities, bringing these forward to council, and thank you to council for for their support. I think it bodes well for us in the future, so thank you. Moving down, we are at item G, Lethbridge County Council Attendance Update, November 2022, G1. And I would go to Lauren, Division 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on November the 2nd, I attended the FCSS meeting, and November the 3rd was County Council, went to the Fall Convention of RMA, and attended the City of Lethbridge Region Remembrance Day ceremony at the exhibition grounds. And November 15th to the 17th, I attended the FCSS conference, and I'd just like to say a few words about that. Some of the issues that the FCSS is currently facing, they're trying to respond to rural homelessness for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. The challenges are, there are so many people who are relying upon them to advance their case to the government, and they really don't have the staff to do it, but there's nobody else to do it, so they're absolutely trying their best to put forward the cases for them. However, they cannot physically guarantee any results because they really aren't the agency to do that. One of the things that they did say that 37% of the homeless people live outside of the 7 major cities in Alberta. And the other topic that they had was rural mental health, and this one kind of shocked me. One of the biggest challenges, of course, is the lack of facilities and providers in smaller populated areas, and they simply cannot attract any service providers to some of these areas. So the majority of the people, again, are turning to FCSS for help. And this is a bit shocking part of the whole thing to me, was that 76% of all the farmers they have talked to are considered to be stressed out, and the suicide rate amongst them is twice to 6 times as high as the majority of the population of the province. Some of them said they'd be better off to be dead than they are to be currently where they are, which is rather alarming. And they don't seem to have or think that the current people who are working in the field understand farming, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges there. Alcoholism and burnout are a huge problem in agriculture. One other thing that has come up in that discussion was when they have to remove animals from the farm, either through say a shortage of feed, or they have a disease in there and they have to kill off their entire herd. That is a tremendous stress to everybody involved in agriculture. And they did say one of the other large contributing factors was the turnover of ag land to future farmers in the family, or how do you get out of the business? And some people are not working well and being able to handle turning it over to family members, because they all have different ideas of how things should be run, yet they want advice and financial help from the parents, and it's sort of almost beyond control, and sometimes is leading to some very disastrous results. So just a few things there on that, and I would be glad to answer any questions if you had any. And on November 29th, I attended the budget deliberations.
Thank you, Lauren. Morse? Or sorry, Morse. Claus?
Just on your announcement about the farmers and the taking over from the farms and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a job for the FCSS. I think that there's so many succession lawyers and succession people out there. There's so many out there that is just not normal anymore. I guess there's a lot of money in that business trying to move your farm over to the next generation or to somebody else. That they are, but there are places where you can go.
Sorry, I didn't mean, maybe I misled you on that comment. It's the stress that the people are facing from actually doing it, not FCSS is doing it. It's they're having to handle the people who are involved like they're all stressed out and they feel they have nowhere else to go, so they go and talk to them about it.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Lauren? Move on to Division 2. I will maybe just grab onto a couple highlights, and if you have questions for any of the ones that I didn't address, please feel free. November the 4th, attended the Farming Smarter 10-year celebration. As the name suggests, it was celebrating their 10 years since becoming Farming Smarter. They were the result of a number of smaller agencies, research groups coming together to create Farming Smarter. Since the government of Alberta has pivoted as far as research goes, and government-led research in entities such as Farming Smarter have had both a blessing and a curse, I think, in the sense that they are being looked at and asked to really shoulder that load. And there is some funding available, obviously, through ARDAR and the provincial government, but it is a bit of a different world out there right now as far as on-farm and farm research goes. So my hat's off to Ken and his team there at Farming Smarter for the work they do. November 7th to 10th, we attended the RMA Fall Convention. Thank you to council and staff for everyone's attendance and work at that convention. We had a number of meetings, and I think they all went well. The ministers were receptive, even though they were obviously very early in their tenure in their portfolios, but thank you to them for their time. November 25th, I attended the MAD Project Red Ribbon Kickoff in Coaldale. Thank you to Mayor Jack Van Ryan for passing that invitation on with just the day before there. We crossed paths and he passed that along, so thank you to Jack for that. I'm a big supporter of MAD and the work they do, and going back to 25 years ago, being part of SAD at our school, so a big supporter of the work they do, and it was a really nice event, and just a really sobering reminder of the effects that impaired driving can cause, and those are preventable deaths. So thanks again for that invite, and appreciate the work they do. On the 26th, I attended the Coaldale District Emergency Services Annual Awards Ceremony in Coaldale. Always happy to get that invite and happy to participate. Thank you to Mark and Pat for attending as well to represent the county. And on the 27th, attended the Mayor's second annual Community Hockey Challenge hosted by Mayor Higgin at the ATB Center on the west side. At last tally, I believe it's over $3,000 raised, and a significant quantity of non-perishable food items towards the 2 Lethbridge food banks. Thank you to Lethbridge City staff for putting that together, and thank you for Blaine for spearheading that. It was a fun event, and it was good to do something kind of in that vein that was a little bit normal again after the last couple of years. So look forward to other opportunities moving forward, and I know Blaine and I have had some discussions about other potential ways to involve all of council in community events such as that. I would take any questions if anyone had any. If not, I will throw to Division 3. Mark.
Thanks, Troy. My list there, the Parade of Lights in Coaldale was a good event. That was fun. I always enjoy seeing that. The streets were just packed, so that was encouraging. We had a lot of fun. It was a cool night, but it was a great event. And again, also the Coaldale District Emergency Services Annual Awards. That was really good to see. It's amazing to see how dedicated the crew, the volunteers they have in Coaldale it was. So that was a great event there too. So, and that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Division 4, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to touch on the highlights on my meetings. November 25th was, let's talk about the 24th first of all, in terms of IDP meetings with the town of Colehurst and the open house with the town of Coaldale. I really do appreciate the time that our municipal partners within the area here allow us to attend, and I appreciate the conversations that go on with that and the cooperation that we're developing with our municipalities that lie within our borders. November 25th, I attended on behalf of the county the announcement from the province regarding Highway 3 twinning in Medicine Hat, and it was a good situation. It was appreciative that Our Premier has renewed the commitment to continue with the twinning of the Highway 3 from Tabor to Burdett, which was due to break ground here this coming year in 2023, and then further double down on the commitment to finish twinning the highway from the border to Medicine Hat within the next 8 years. On November 30th, and I talked about this at our last council meeting, I attended a Truth and Reconciliation training in standoff, which was insightful, and as always with any of these, you take, there are a number of things that you can take from any of this, and I wanted to reiterate that one of the things that I took from it was respect and compassion for all individuals on this planet. So, thank you.
Thanks, John. Division 5, Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. November 7 to 10, RMA Fall Convention. Lots of good meetings with a few good meetings with ministers, and really appreciated participating, and there was a noticeable air of enthusiasm and optimism going forward with any of those meetings. The Highway 3 announcement in Medicine Hat on the November 25th, that was just good to be there, good to see how that goes. But I think it's missed on it is that this is actually the first time the province has committed start to finish until completion that this project is going through. It's been downplayed a lot that it's a reaffirming, but it's actually the first time they're fully committed. We're going through with it start to finish, and keep her happening. So, and budget deliberations. So that was good to participate with those. Thank you.
Eric, as council's appointee to the Highway 3 Twinning Development Association, do you have any indication as to the role they're going to play moving forward? Will that still be an ongoing advocacy effort, or do you see that winding down?
The Highway 3 Twinning Development Association is still going to be a very active part of it. And as far as I've been told, Councillor Chapman from Coaldale is president with that. And as far as I've been told, they are still boots on the ground for this to keep working forward and moving it.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Division 6, Claus?
Yeah, my report here is speaks for itself. I don't think I have to have any comments on any of them unless anybody has any questions.
Good report.
Division 7, Morris?
Setting the bar for you, Morris.
Yes, and everything has been said already, so I don't need to say anything else either. I'm echoing Councilor Benefit, and yeah, everything was good.
Thank you, Morris. So with that, that concludes the open portion of our meeting. We do have one additional in closed session item. Before we get to that, sometimes when we have that closed session item as the last item on the agenda, it doesn't get captured. When we actually adjourn, it doesn't get captured. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for everything in 2022. This is our last meeting of the year. Thank you for everything from council. Thank you for your support and the hard work and for everything that we've accomplished. I think we should be proud of what we've accomplished in 2022. Thank you to staff for all your work. It doesn't go unnoticed, the hard work and the dedication that goes in from not only the people in this room, senior staff, but throughout Lethbridge County. I think we're very lucky to have a dedicated team to help support council, and we look forward to continuing that and moving forward into 2023. And with that, I would say, best wishes for a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Happy Holidays and safe travels for everyone over the holidays. And thank you very much on behalf of council. Morris?
Yeah, thank you for that beautiful things you said. I guess next Thursday we having a get-together in Pittsfield at the alcohol.
Yes, and I apologize, Morris, because I didn't think I'd sent that to you, but Candace has been sending it.
Okay.
I did believe I sent it to you, but I haven't.
Eric?
Motion to enter closed session.
So moved.